The first sound was laughter, not warm, not innocent, but the sharp kind that breaks glass inside your chest. Ethan Callahan stood near the end of a long oak dining table, fingers pressed against the cool stem of a wine glass he hadn't touched. The chandelier above threw fractured light over faces that belonged in magazines, Savannah's friends, her curated kingdom. Their teeth flashed, their nails glittered, and their laughter fed on him as if humiliation were the night's dessert. Savannah herself sat at the head of the table, her red dress folding like silk flame across her lap. She looked effortless, dangerous in the way only someone who knows the room bends toward her can look. She smiled, not at him, but through him, as she raised a glass and announced, "To my husband. A man who fixes things." The pause was the cruelty. Someone coughed a laugh. Gemma, Savannah's closest friend, leaned in with theatrical pity. "Oh, he fixes everything. Toilets, light bulbs, broken pride." The table rippled with amusement. Even the waitstaff, stiff-backed and silent, betrayed flickers of smirks. Ethan's throat tightened, but he didn't move. He'd learned that silence was armor, that giving their cruelty no echo robbed it of oxygen. Still, the fire in his chest flared with every clink of glass. Chase Duvall, slick-haired and rich boy handsome, lifted his own glass. "Come on, Savannah. Give him some credit. He keeps the whole city running, don't you?" Now it was clear, he hadn't been invited into it. He'd been kept as a prop. The final cut came with the check. $3,000, placed neatly on a silver tray, slid down the table until it rested in front of him. Savannah's red-tipped nails tapped the folder as if sealing a fate. "Darling," she purred, "you've got this." No one offered to split. No one blinked. Ethan reached into his wallet. The card he pulled out felt flimsy against the polished wood. As the machine beeped its approval, he caught the reflection of Savannah's smirk in the dark window beside him. That smirk had once been his prize. Now it was his executioner. They left in a drizzle that smeared the city lights into streaks of neon. Ethan's truck was parked at the curb, old paint dulled by years of honest labor. Chase, slipping an arm around Savannah's waist as they lingered under the awning, exhaled a short laugh and spat directly onto the hood. The sound, wet, final, echoed louder than the traffic. Savannah didn't flinch. Didn't scold. She only watched Ethan with a look that said, "You'll do nothing. You never do." And Ethan didn't. Not then. He climbed into the truck, wiped the spit with the back of his sleeve, and drove. The rain tapped a rhythm on the windshield as if mocking him. By the time he pulled into their driveway, his hands ached from gripping the wheel. Inside, Savannah was already upstairs, her heels clicking on hardwood, her laughter continuing in the echo of a phone call. Ethan sat in the dark kitchen alone. He let the silence stretch until it became something solid. He thought of Uncle Frank, the uncle no one spoke of, the shadow at the family's edge who had vanished into whispers decades ago. A man whose name still lived on the factory that powered half the city. The memory came unbidden. Ethan, 12 years old, standing by the factory gates while Uncle Frank handed him a wrench too big for his hands. "Tools don't lie," Frank had said. "People do. But tools? They only do what you make them do." That night, Ethan fell asleep on the sofa, still dressed, staring at the ceiling as thunder rolled through the city. His phone lay silent on the counter. He didn't know, couldn't know, that by morning it would explode with calls, that a lawyer's voice would inform him he now owned everything his uncle had built. He only knew the taste of betrayal, the weight of silence, and the flicker of something unfamiliar, not rage, not yet. Something steadier. Something waiting. The next morning broke quiet, the kind of stillness where you could hear every creak of the house settling, every flap of the curtains against the open window. Alex was already awake, sitting at the small wooden table in Sarah's kitchen, his coffee cooling untouched beside him. His body still carried the restlessness from the night before. Every muscle had remained half tense, ears tuned to the smallest sound, as if waiting for something he couldn't see. Sarah padded in, her robe loosely tied, hair caught in a hurried bun. She stopped when she saw him. "You didn't sleep," she said, not asking, stating. Alex shrugged, eyes still fixed on the window. Didn't need to. She poured herself tea, carefully avoiding his gaze. For a few moments, the only sound was the whistle of the kettle cooling down. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, uncertain. I've lived in this house for 15 years. I've never thought twice about the lock on that door until last night. Alex turned then, the shadow of something darker flickering behind his expression. Locks keep honest people out. The rest, you need more than a key for them. She swallowed, lips pressing tight. The words unsettled her because they felt rehearsed, as though Alex had lived that reality before. He wanted to change the subject, but she kept watching him, and the silence began to weigh. Finally he leaned back, his chair creaking under his frame. You're not used to danger. I get it. Teachers don't exactly train for this. Her eyebrows arched slightly. And boxers do? Alex smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ex-boxers. We train to see hits before they come. And sometimes, to keep standing even when we shouldn't. It wasn't bravado, it was confession. Sarah sensed it, and though she didn't press, the air thickened between them with questions neither dared to ask. I don't understand, why now? Why me? Alex didn't answer right away. His gaze followed the vehicle until it turned out of sight. Then he faced her, jaw tight. Maybe it's not about you, he said quietly. The words landed heavy. Sarah looked at him, confusion layered with fear. What are you saying? Alex hesitated, as though debating how much truth to give her. Finally, he exhaled. Sometimes trouble doesn't knock on the right door. Sometimes it comes looking for someone like me, and ends up at yours. Sarah's face paled. So you think last night wasn't random? His tone was firm, final. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls inching closer. Sarah's safe little world, lesson plans, parent-teacher nights, quiet evenings with books, was cracking. And Alex, the man she had thought was simply a tenant of circumstance, was suddenly a stranger with shadows trailing behind him. She set down her mug carefully, as if it might break in her hands. Then you need to tell me everything. If I'm in danger, if my home isn't safe anymore, I deserve to know why. Alex's eyes locked on hers, and for a moment, his guarded mask slipped. She could see the weight he carried, like bruises under the skin no one could see. You deserve the truth, he admitted, but it's not a story you'll like. A silence stretched, thick with expectation. The air between them buzzed with both fear and something unspoken, fragile yet undeniable. Then the front door rattled hard. Sarah jumped, a hand flying to her chest. Alex was already moving, his body a shield between her and the entryway. Stay back, he ordered, voice steady. Another rattle, louder this time, then the echo of footsteps retreating down the porch. Alex opened the door, but the street was empty. Only the faint smell of exhaust lingered. Sarah's voice broke the silence, trembling. They're coming back, aren't they? Alex glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. They never really left. Perfect. Now we move into the midpoint twist, where the story shifts gears and forces the characters into deeper conflict and higher stakes. Here's Section 3, 700 words, green circle. Section 3. Midpoint twist. The police came and went quickly, leaving behind only their clipped reassurances and the hollow echo of a half-written report. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses, no fingerprints worth chasing. To Sarah, it felt like they'd packed her fear into a neat little box labeled, "Not urgent," and carried it out the door. But Alex didn't relax. He stood by the window long after the cruiser's taillights faded, his jaw set, his fists clenching and unclenching like he was fighting the urge to punch through glass. Why aren't you saying anything? Sarah asked finally. Because they'll be back, Alex muttered. And the cops won't be here when they are. The certainty in his voice made her stomach drop. She hugged her arms tight across her chest. You know something you're not telling me. He turned then, and for the first time, his mask cracked wide open. I left a life behind, Sarah. But life doesn't just let you walk away. It waits. It watches. And when it's ready, it knocks. Her throat tightened. Who are they? Alex's eyes darted toward the dark street beyond the curtains, as if saying their names out loud might summon them. His voice dropped, heavy with regret. They're people I used to fight for. People I used to fight against. It doesn't matter. What matters is, they don't forget. Sarah's knees weakened, so she sank into the nearest chair. The thought of her quiet home, her safe little world, being collateral in someone else's unfinished war made her chest ache. Then why stay here? She whispered. Why bring it here? Alex crouched down in front of her, his voice urgent. Because last night wasn't just about me. That SUV? That door? They weren't testing locks, Sarah. They were testing you. They wanted to see how scared you'd get. And if you'd break. Tears stung her eyes, unbidden. I'm not part of this. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. His gaze softened for the first time. And that's why I can't leave you unprotected. The rawness of his words lingered in the air between them, both terrifying and strangely steadying. For the first time, she realized Alex wasn't just a storm that had blown into her life. He was also the wall holding it back. But before she could respond, a sharp thud rattled against the back door. Both their heads snapped up. Another thud followed, heavier this time, like someone throwing their shoulder into it. Alex was already on his feet, crossing the kitchen with the controlled speed of a predator. He pressed himself flat against the wall beside the door, signaling Sarah to stay silent. The third strike was harder, wood splintering under the pressure. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, every instinct screaming to run, but her legs felt cemented to the floor. And then silence. A shadow flickered past the window. Alex lunged, yanking the curtain aside just in time to see two figures retreating into the tree line beyond the fence. They're not here to rob you, he said, voice tight. They're here to send a message. Sarah staggered forward, her voice shaking. What message? That I'm still theirs. The weight of his admission hit her like a cold wave. This wasn't just about chance. This was deliberate. I've been alone in this fight for years, he said quietly. But if they think they can use you to get to me, they've already lost. The door shut behind him before Sarah could answer, leaving her in the hollow silence of the house. Her trembling hand reached for the window, watching his figure stride into the night. She didn't know if he was walking into battle or into a trap. All she knew was this: her life was no longer her own. Whatever Alex was running from had just become her war too. The night stretched long after Alex left, every creak of the house making Sarah flinch, every gust of wind rattling the windows like a warning. She sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the front door as if sheer vigilance could keep it from opening. Her hands trembled around the phone, but she couldn't bring herself to dial anyone. What would she even say? That shadows had invaded her life and stolen the safety she'd built brick by brick? The silence was unbearable. Finally, she whispered into the empty room. Come back safe, Alex. Alex drove with both hands clenched on the wheel, his eyes locked forward, not on the road, but on the memories rushing up to meet him. Fights in dimly lit gyms, backroom deals, men who smiled with knives in their pockets. He'd walked away years ago, choosing silence over survival games, anonymity over power. But ghosts didn't stay buried. They followed. They tested. He pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The SUV from earlier sat waiting like a predator in the dark. 3 men stepped out. Alex recognized 2 instantly. The third, leaner, sharper, with a smirk that didn't belong to a stranger, made his chest tighten. Alex Torres, the man drawled. Didn't think you had the guts to show up. Alex's voice was steady, but his pulse thundered. Leave her out of this. She has nothing to do with me. The man chuckled, slow and deliberate. Funny thing about ghosts, Torres. They don't knock on random doors. They follow the scent of unfinished business. Back at the house, Sarah couldn't stand the waiting anymore. She lit a candle in the kitchen, her hands still shaking. The glow flickered across the family photos on her fridge, classroom snapshots, holiday gatherings, her parents' smiles, and a wave of guilt crashed over her. Her life had always been predictable, even safe. She'd chosen routine over risk, stability over surprise. And now, because of Alex, because of whatever past he carried, that stability was unraveling. Yet even as fear gnawed at her, something inside her resisted. She replayed his words. If they think they can use you to get to me, they've already lost. Why would he put himself in front of danger like that for her? Why risk everything? Unless protecting her wasn't just about guilt, it was about something deeper. She grabbed her keys. At the warehouse, tension thickened. The men circled Alex, their voices needling, trying to draw out the fighter they remembered. You disappeared, one sneered. Left us to clean up the mess. Thought you could live like a normal man, huh? I'm not yours anymore, Alex growled. The leader smirked, stepping closer. Oh, but you are. You'll always be. Unless, his eyes gleamed. Unless we break you through her. Alex's fists clenched so hard his knuckles whitened. That was their plan. Sarah wasn't just leverage, she was bait. The first punch came without warning, a blur in the dark. Alex blocked, then countered, his body moving with instincts honed long ago. The sound of impact echoed in the empty lot, flesh meeting flesh, grunts and snarls blending with the thud of boots on concrete. It wasn't just a fight, it was a reckoning. Sarah's headlights cut across the lot as she pulled in, her breath catching when she saw the figures moving in violent rhythm. Alex! She cried out, the sound sharp enough to freeze him mid-strike. One of the men lunged toward her, and Alex reacted with pure fury, slamming him to the ground. But the distraction gave the leader time to pull a blade, its edge glinting under the moonlight. Stay back! Alex shouted, his voice raw, but Sarah was already halfway out of the car, her fear burning into resolve. The knife raised high, the leader sneered. This ends tonight, Torres. For a heartbeat, the world went still, Alex's muscles coiled, Sarah's breath caught, the night itself holding its breath. The climax wasn't just coming, it was seconds away. The blade gleamed under the warehouse floodlight, a thin silver line trembling inches from Alex's chest. The leader's smirk widened, savoring the moment, while the other staggered back, bruised but hungry for blood. Alex's body screamed for motion, for the punch, the block, the takedown, but his eyes flicked toward Sarah. She was frozen just beyond the car, her hands clutched white-knuckled against the door, her eyes wide with terror. He knew if he lunged, the knife might cut toward her instead. Look at her, the leader hissed. Doesn't she remind you of what you'll never have? Peace. A home. Someone who believes you can be more than fists and scars. The words cut deeper than the blade. Alex's jaw tightened, 1,000 memories surging, broken ribs, shady contracts, men who bet on his pain like dice in a cup. He had walked away to bury that man. Yet here it was, clawing back, threatening to take the only fragile good thing he'd found. Sarah stepped forward. Stop! Her voice cracked but carried. He's not yours anymore. And I'm not yours either. The leader laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Sweetheart, you already are. You've been since the moment he chose to stay in your house. Alex's pulse hammered, his muscles coiled. If I move wrong, she dies. If I don't move at all, she breaks. And then, something shifted. Sarah's eyes, locked on his, didn't beg for safety. They burned with defiance, with something stronger than fear. For the first time, she wasn't waiting to be saved. Alex, she whispered, steady this time. Don't fight for them. Fight for you. For us. The word hung between them, us, and it detonated inside him. With a roar that carried years of rage, Alex exploded forward. His forearm snapped up, knocking the knife hand wide, steel clattering against concrete. His other fist drove into the leader's gut with bone-rattling force. The leader staggered upright, blood at the corner of his mouth, knife retrieved, fury boiling in his eyes. But when he looked at Alex now, something faltered. This wasn't the fighter he remembered, bound by their rules. This was a man stripped raw, fueled not by survival but by conviction. Alex stood tall, every scar, every bruise a testament. You don't own me. You never did. And you'll never touch her. The leader lunged in desperation. Alex caught his wrist mid-strike, twisting until the knife fell again. With one brutal, decisive motion, Alex shoved him back against the SUV, pinning him. You want me? Alex's voice was low, deadly calm. Here I am. But she's off limits. Forever. The leader's breath came ragged, but he didn't reply. He didn't need to. The silence was surrender. Alex let him go, the man collapsing to his knees, broken not by fists, but by the realization that his control was gone. Sarah stood trembling, tears streaking her face, but when Alex turned, she didn't step back. She stepped forward. His hands were bloodied, his body battered, yet her arms went around him without hesitation. For a heartbeat, he stiffened, and used a touch that wasn't violence. Then, slowly, he sank into her hold, head dropping against her shoulder. I told you, she whispered, her voice shaking but steady. They never had you. And now they never will. The sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance, too late, as always. But neither of them looked away from the other. The fight was over. The war wasn't. But something far greater had shifted. For the first time in years, Alex wasn't standing alone. The blade caught the moonlight, a cruel flash of steel hanging between life and death. Alex's chest tightened, not with fear for himself, but for Sarah, frozen only a few yards away. Don't! Alex warned, voice low, coiled like a spring. The leader smirked. You think you still get to set the rules? You're just a fighter without a ring, Torres. A ghost of what you used to be. The knife slashed forward. Alex dodged, but the tip grazed his arm, hot pain flaring through muscle. He didn't flinch, he'd taken worse. What mattered was the space it bought, the man edging closer to Sarah. Run! Alex roared, but Sarah didn't move. Her hands gripped the car door so tightly her knuckles blanched, but her feet rooted to the ground. Her eyes, wide, terrified, were fixed on him. The second attacker lunged, tackling Alex from behind. Concrete scraped his palms as he went down, the knife glinting above him. He rolled, grappling, sweat and blood mingling as his breath came ragged. Years of suppressed instinct came flooding back, every strike, every dodge automatic, born of survival. But 3 against 1 wasn't a fight, it was punishment. Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. She should have left, should have called the police, should have done anything but follow him here. And yet, seeing him battered against the asphalt, fighting shadows from a past he couldn't escape, she knew leaving wasn't an option. They weren't just after Alex. They were after control. They wanted to prove no one ever left. And if Alex fell, she'd be next. Her gaze darted to the ground. The heavy flashlight she kept in her glove compartment had rolled free when she'd opened the door. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The leader raised the knife again, this time aimed square at Alex's chest. For a split second, the world slowed, the blade descending, Alex's arms pinned by the others, breath sharp in his lungs. And then, crack. The flashlight struck the leader's temple with a sickening thud. His body reeled sideways, knife clattering against the concrete. Sarah stood there, chest heaving, both hands still gripping the flashlight like a weapon, her eyes blazing through the fear. Stay away from him, she said, her voice breaking but fierce. The shock gave Alex the opening he needed. He twisted, slamming his shoulder into the man holding him down, flipping him hard onto the pavement. The other lunged, but Alex caught him square in the ribs with a blow that reverberated in the night. Years of exile, of restraint, of running, it all snapped loose. Alex fought not as a man avoiding the past, but as one claiming the right to end it. Each strike was brutal, precise, final. The leader staggered back to his feet, fury twisting his face. Blood streaked down his temple, but his smirk returned, cruel as ever. You think this changes anything? You're still one of us. Alex advanced, chest heaving, Sarah's presence burning like fuel in his veins. No. I'm not. The final punch shattered the silence. It wasn't wild, it was controlled, decisive. The leader collapsed, sprawling on the concrete, the knight swallowing his threat. For a long moment, only the sound of ragged breathing filled the lot. Alex straightened slowly, chest burning, muscles trembling with exhaustion. He turned to Sarah. Her hands still clutched the flashlight, but her expression softened. She wasn't looking at a fighter, she was looking at the man who had stood between her and the storm, even when it nearly broke him. Alex's voice cracked as he spoke. You shouldn't have been here. Her tears spilled freely now, but her chin lifted. And you shouldn't have been alone. The words cut deeper than any blade. Alex dropped the knife at his feet, the clatter echoing like an ending. His past lay broken around him, bleeding, groaning, defeated, but not gone. Never gone. Yet for the first time, he didn't feel chained to it. He looked at Sarah, and something shifted, fragile, terrifying, real. She had saved him. Not with strength, but with the courage to stand in his storm. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, red and blue flashing faintly across the horizon. Sarah's breath hitched, and Alex glanced at her, voice low but steady. This isn't over. But with you, maybe I can stop running. As the sirens closed in, Sarah slipped her hand into his, her grip trembling but unyielding. The night had broken them open, but in the ruin, something fierce had been born, something worth fighting for. The warehouse lot was chaos when the sirens arrived, flashing lights splashing red and blue across concrete stained with sweat and blood. Officers shouted commands, paramedics rushed past, and the groans of Alex's fallen enemies filled the air like a broken chorus. But Sarah barely heard any of it. Her world had narrowed to the warmth of Alex's hand in hers, the roughness of his skin, the weight of his silence. Ma'am, are you hurt? A paramedic asked, crouching in front of her. Sarah blinked, realizing she still clutched the dented flashlight. Slowly, she let it drop to the ground, her fingers stiff from gripping it so tightly. I'm fine, she whispered. Fine wasn't the word. She was trembling, hollow, and yet, for the first time since the break-in, she felt awake. Alive in a way she hadn't before. Alex stood a few feet away, his frame towering even under the harsh glare of headlights. Officers were trying to question him, pens poised over notepads, but he answered little. His jaw was set, his eyes distant, as though the fight wasn't over, not out there, not inside him. When the crowd thinned, Sarah walked toward him, her steps unsteady. He turned as she approached, the bruises on his face stark in the flashing light. You should go home, he said, voice low. And leave you here? She asked. His gaze flicked away. I don't want you tangled in this any more than you already are. She stepped closer, refusing to be pushed aside. That choice isn't yours anymore, Alex. Not after tonight. He looked at her then, really looked. The walls he'd built around himself, stone by stone, fight by fight, seemed to crack under the weight of her words. You saved me, he admitted. It sounded almost like a confession. Sarah shook her head, tears welling again. No. You saved me first. I just refused to let you carry it alone. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of engines and the murmur of distant radios. For a moment, it felt like the world had paused for them alone. Hours later, the house was quiet again. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the same place where this had all begun. Only now the air felt different, charged, fragile, alive with ghosts that still lingered at the edges. Alex stood by the window, arms crossed, staring into the darkness beyond. He hadn't said much on the drive back, but his presence filled the room like a storm cloud that had not yet broken. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice soft but steady. Are they gone? Alex shook his head slowly. Men like that, they don't disappear. They retreat. They wait. The truth should have chilled her, but instead, it grounded her. Life wasn't suddenly safe again, maybe it never would be. But safety and living weren't the same thing. She rose from her chair, walking to stand beside him. Then we wait, too. He turned, startled, as though he hadn't expected her to choose the harder path. Sarah, I know you want to protect me, she interrupted. But don't you see? Tonight proved something. You don't have to do this alone anymore. His eyes softened, the fight in them dimming into something else, something more vulnerable. For the first time, he let himself exhale. A long, heavy breath, as if laying down a weight he'd carried for years. Outside, the first hint of dawn brushed the sky, pale light creeping over rooftops. Alex leaned against the window frame, watching it rise. You'll regret this, he murmured half to himself. Sarah slipped her hand into his again, her grip firm, unwavering. Maybe. But I'd regret walking away more. The light grew stronger, spilling into the kitchen, casting their shadows long against the wall. They stood together, two people bound not by chance, but by choice, by the